What can we do as students to change things?
Well, I think I would just say, think about Tom Hyland. Follow your outrage. If there are things that make you uncomfortable or irritated, if there's an injustice, follow that sense. That's what Tom did. And that's a real David and Goliath. I mean, an unemployed bus driver. And I know a lot of us say, oh, well, it's dreadfully sad, but what can I do? I'm only an ordinary person. We're all ordinary people. But Tom showed that that can be done. So I'd have to sit down and talk with you and find out what are your interests before I could give anything but except a more general thing like that, like follow your outrage in the same way that I used to say to students when I was a tutor in Trinity, follow your motivation. Because the students I found that were in distress and they were failing their exams and they were dropping out and all the rest of it, they were almost invariably students that had been forced to do something by their parents that they didn't want to do. You know, they were made do dentistry and they wanted to do theatre studies or fine arts or something. And I'm glad to say I helped to ease some of them out into the world because I knew as a teacher myself that the students will really blossom if they're motivated, if they're following something for which they have a genuine love and interest. And the mark of a great teacher, in my opinion, and I was taught by a number of great teachers, particularly Brendan Kennelly, the poet from Ballylongford in County Kerry. Brendan's genius was to take whatever tiny little spark of talent the student had. And the student might be nervous, tongue-tied, shy, embarrassed, feeling inadequate. Brendan would take whatever spark there was, and instead of quenching it, he'd fan it. He'd fan it into life, and that they would come alive. And I've also seen some other colleagues, and they would take great sadistic pleasure in displaying how much better read, how much cleverer, and how much more sophisticated they were than the students they were teaching. They were the lousy teachers. No matter how many degrees they had, they were uniformly lousy teachers. So I say, in the same way, follow your instinct. If there's some area of life, or if there's some organization that you can help, like the DePaul Trust, like Amnesty. I mean, there's a group, Amnesty. And Amnesty now, I remember in the old days I tried to get Sean McBride to speak out on behalf of a Finnish gay organization, and he treated me with absolute contempt. Now, I was very shocked by his behavior, but I got my revenge because RTE did a series called Speaking Ill of the Dead. And I chose McBride, and I did a hell of a good job on him, I'm telling you, post-mortem. But Amnesty did. Now Amnesty cover everybody. And they cover the victims, both women and men, of sexual violence, and gay men, and all the rest of it. So there's so many groups. Then there's Goal, there's AFRI, and a lot of them came from the churches, principally the Roman Catholic churches. So we mustn't forget that as well. Awful as the crimes of individual members, and paralyzed as the bureaucracy of the church was with its own self-importance, there was still wonderful, valuable work done by people who had an affiliation to the church. So, I mean, you can choose your own, but the main thing is you have to be motivated, because I'll tell you this, if you're not motivated to help out of a sense of your own unease, the people you're dealing with will smell it a mile off, because it'd be so bloody patronizing. I mean, I go to church every week. I go to St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, which is the Anglican cathedral. And when I'm in Cyprus, I used to go to St. Barnabas's church. But I don't go anymore, because they have this awful thing. I don't know if any of you still go to church. The peace of the Lord be always with you, and also with you. We will now exchange the sign of peace. We will now fanny. Why should I touch some person I've never seen? Why should I give them a free grope before lunch? No, thank you. They're not getting near me. So in the cathedral, there's a door on my box, and I just slam it. I say, yes, happy Christmas, Merry Easter, whatever you're having yourself, but I don't touch strangers before lunch. Now go and find another victim. But in St. Barnabas, you can't get away from it. And the worst of it is, there are two Cypriot girls in wheelchairs who have cerebral palsy. and and these ghastly people who got to communion, they come back down and they go, bless you. I fight the bloody fingers off whenever we need it. So it has to be genuine, it has to come from the heart, and you have to know that partly a product of your own inadequacy is because it sets your teeth on edge when you see the pictures not straight. So the easiest thing in the world is to patronize. And I think you have to avoid that. You have to acknowledge that you're doing it from your own unease. And then eventually, when we have the entire world sorted out, we can have another bloody good party and have the original Disneyland Caravan back. But the one thing we haven't spoken about, and I want to say one little thing about this, I'm going next week to the launch of the United Nations Global Population Report. And the one thing that won't be spoken about there is population. And that's happened for every single year of last 3 years. I forget what it is this year, but last year was female genital mutilation, the year before that was education. Rubbish! And for God's sake, behind the unemployment, the resource wars, the conflict between nations, global climate change, warming, the extinction of species, and the fact that we're now clearly coming up against a barrier in terms of the resources of the planet, population. Nobody speaks about it. All the religions, you see, are committed to a breeding program so that they can outbreed their rivals. It's absolutely disgusting and immoral. How can the planet survive? I'm doing the Bartholomew Moss lecture. He was the man who founded the Rotunda Hospital, I think at the beginning of next month. And I'm going to talk about that, building the very interesting business plan we had for it. But when that was built in 1745, the entire population of the planet was 6 million. It's now 6 billion. So that's a different world. And it's a world most of whose problems have come from this exponential and unregulated rise in the population. And I can tell you, I'm going to keep up stinking at that thing. But I've done it the last 3 years. I kind of frothed in front of reporters and tried to angle in front of the cameras about what because I think it's something that has to be said. None of this. People are too uncomfortable with it. And I say this, the Chinese, at least, they had the courage to address the problem. They did it in a very harsh and unacceptable way. They breached the human rights. But the planet is dying. And at least they did something. But anyway, I am a crack. So if you're going to vote for me, you're voting for a crack.